Templeton India Equity Income Fund was launched in 2006. Templeton India Equity Income Fund was the first fund which has an opportunity to invest overseas. Because of the fact that the Templeton Emerging Markets Group has 19 offices and 50 analysts across the emerging markets world, we were able to use those offices to the fullest extent to pick stocks for this fund, whereas not actually investing too much on our own in terms of overseas investment capability. Fund very differently from the way all the other people look at emerging markets funds, and one difference in characteristic is the fact that we look at this fund to add to portfolio diversification. For example, we have semiconductor stocks in Templeton India Equity Income Fund. There are not too many semiconductor stocks listed in the Indian equity market. Similarly, we have an exposure to a company which is invested in platinum and diamonds. Now, this is not a sector which is listed in the Indian market. So, we have these opportunities which are across the emerging markets world, which we have used to construct a portfolio which will add value to the Indian investor who traditionally doesn't have such opportunities available to him. So, for example, if I have an existing steel company in the India portion of this fund, chances are that I will not be buying another steel company in the overseas assets, but rather I would probably buy a fund which is a stock which is probably in a soft drink arena. So, that actually gives this diversification benefit, that you are not only betting on the same sector, but you are actually betting on another sector, but which has dividend yield which is available in the other markets. So, for sectors where we are not represented in India, such as I would say the FMCG sector, which traditionally has had higher multiples than the market, we actually look at FMCG companies in other markets, and we have exposure to these kind of companies in other markets, which helps the fund on the whole. So, we've seen this, that we've had this crisis in 2008 and a big rally in 2010, and we've ensured that through this the fund has actually done quite well as compared to the Indian benchmarks and has delivered absolute return with considerably lower volatility as compared to any single country fund. So, to that extent, the fund now, which was just a concept earlier, has now worked for 5 years and is doing pretty okay. We've seen good absolute returns, and the fund has paid off in terms of diversification. All the emerging market analysts are actually on a centralized system called Emerging Markets Database, where everybody, all the analysts put in all the information, and which is looked at in the same format by all the analysts across the emerging markets world. So, when I look at stocks for the Templeton India Equity Income Fund, one of the important characteristics of these overseas stocks is the dividend yield. So, I can actually screen based on the research what kind of dividend yields various stocks in various markets offer. Then I also do a comparison as to what are the local stocks available and within the portfolio, and then see based on diversification benefits what kind of stocks can be looked at for this particular fund. As we've explained in the prospectus, yield is of paramount consideration while selecting a stock. However, we are not just looking at current dividend yield. As in all our research, we look at long-term dividend yield and long-term dividend yield potential of these companies. So, yield is a very important thing, but you have to look at the time frame within which this yield accrues to investors. Templeton India Equity Income Fund, I think, is ideally suited for all Indian investors who have a long-term vision of investment in the markets and realize the potential benefits of diversification across emerging markets. Diversification is not about return enhancement alone, but it is also about risk mitigation. So, one needs to look at the portfolio in that context and take an informed decision as to why they should invest in this fund. However, I can say for sure that this fund is fairly unique. It is the first of its kind, and it has been actually brought up from the point of view of this percentage investment in India as well as a percentage investment overseas. It is not a overseas diversified fund which is being sold in India. It is actually a bottom-up construction of a portfolio, looking at what is the best available securities within India as well as what is the best available securities across emerging markets. This fund should be a core fund for all equity investors. One needs to define core as not just the large cap blue chips within one particular country, but the fact that a core should also include inbuilt diversification, which this fund offers, which not just any country fund offers. This is really for all investors, including the first time investor, because of the fact that it diversifies clients against many risks which are associated with one single country.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.